Okay, our next topic is open source solutions for citizen science and environmental reporting, sensing, and imaging. We have three guest speakers today. First, Mr. Drew Pilot. Drew is a research scientist with the U.S. EPA National Exposure Research Laboratory here in RTP. His research focus is a little extensive, but I'll let him do the summary when he comes on up.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, please. I was going to give you the short.
Sensing, image analysis, mapping kind of things.
Great. We also have Doug Newcomb joining us, Fish and Wildlife Services. He does a lot of open source work in the local area, and he's going to be joining us as well as an ad hoc speaker. And of course, Helen Mitsashova. She is with the Center for Geospatial Analytics at NC State University, with quite the bio as well. Due to time, I'll cut that short so you guys can get to your presentation, and we'll fill in some more information concluding the session. So, Drew, please, everybody, welcome. Joining Drew.
Thank you, Thomas. Wonder what that does. Didn't work. Folder's gone. No. No. There it is. Okay, great. Thanks a lot. There's so much going on in open source, and we thought it would be nice to have a little bit of the open source and how it pertains to imaging science, remote sensing, acquiring information about the landscape from a distance. So I'll talk a little bit about crowdsourcing and the environmental applications, a couple of examples. Doug Newcomb from Fish and Wildlife is going to give us a walkthrough of a nice workflow with links and everything so we can all do our own change detection. And then Helena Mitsashova will talk about a number of open source initiatives. There's a little bit of terminology. I think we all have a pretty good sense for this. But why do we want to do this? Why do we want to crowdsource? Why do we want voluntary geographic information? Basically, because there's so many smart people, people that are out in the field, and who want to contribute. And there are so many citizen science projects going on. This is just a very small sampling. Most of them on the upper part are more government-oriented, and then there's a couple down in the lower part that are NGO or outside the federal government. All these are clickable, and I encourage you to check them out. Why do we need citizen science and remote sensing? To help us validate what we think we're seeing remotely in aerial photography or satellite imagery. OpenStreetMap's an example. Maybe we can leverage people flying their own UAS through open drone kind of mapping. And then, I think that the most powerful technology right now is that we all have a GPS-enabled camera and internet link in our pocket. Incredibly powerful data collection device. And I use it for a phone about once in 100 uses. So a couple examples that we work on at EPA, vector-borne disease. A lot of animal vectors carry diseases. The middle picture shows some dogs and some furniture. Turns out the brown dog tick likes to live in furniture, and the dogs in this neighborhood like to lay on the furniture, and so it's a really strong vector for a Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Then on the right are Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus. Those are Asian tiger mosquitoes. They carry Zika, chikungunya, and dengue viruses. Right now we're working in Brownsville Brownsville, Texas was the second community in the continental U.S. to have locally transmitted Zika. These Aedes mosquitoes are a tree hole species, and before humans came along, they probably lived mostly in tree holes like on the left there. But now that we've come along, Aedes really thrives in the human environment because we have so many impervious containers for them to breed in. They love tires, detention ponds can serve, but flower pots and things we just have in our backyards that collect water, they only need a bottle cap full of water to do their breeding. And the females feed almost exclusively on humans. So it's a really powerful combination. So what we're doing in Brownsville is trying to develop a crowdsourcing approach to finding out where these potential environmental determinants of Aedes habitat are. So you start with people who have cell phones. They see an illegal dump or a stack of tires in the stream, or maybe some facility that has gutters that need to be cleaned. They fill out a few items on a form, upload it to an interactive web map, and then by clicking on those points, the public and or the authorities can see a picture of what's going on the ground there, and then the form on the right tells them what the citizen observed in the field. And then that way, authorities like Department of Public Health or DOT or whoever takes care of these kind of things can get a sense for how much trash are we talking about in this case. So in addition to being a mosquito habitat tool, it's also a general litter pickup tool. This is a 1 meter land cover map of Brownsville, and what we'd like to do is, in a general sense, have people be able to go in and interactively update our land cover maps for us, because we can get most of the way to a decent accuracy with the algorithms, but ultimately we all need to do a little hand editing to make our high resolution land cover maps look nice. So a mapathon kind of thing would work great for this. Final example, harmful algal blooms. The upper left there is an aerial shot of a bloom, and the others are field photos. These harmful algal blooms are a problem not only for fish kills, but some of these algae are harmful to human health. They can create respiratory problems, and some have neurotoxins within them. When we know about Pfisteria in North Carolina. And partly it's an issue related to agricultural runoff. We put a lot of nitrogen and phosphate on our crops, and without adequate riparian buffers, a lot of that gets into the water system, and we get eutrophication, too many nutrients. So a couple of the, this is a partial list of some of the open source software that have some image processing, remote sensing type of capacity. And I'm just emphasizing that because in traditional GIS, there's not as much of a remote sensing image processing toolbox. It's changing these days, but there's some starting points for you. So thanks for your attention. This is a 1 meter land cover map for our lab in RTP. And I'm going to hand off to Doug now, and he's going to tell us about mapping. This one?
Let's find out.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm specifically going to talk about doing some land cover change detection with regard to forest cover using the Sentinel-2 satellite and just using the open source software QGIS. Now the right. Sorry. Okay, I'll be louder also. The Europeans put up this satellite in 2015, and it started gathering data. It's going to have a partner up in about 3 months. It'll take another 3 months or so for that partner satellite to start collecting data as well. And at that time, you'll have every 5 days coverage, as opposed to the Landsat, you have every, 16, 18 days? So right off the bat, with the original satellite, you have a more often collection time. So you generally average out to getting about, with clouds and such, a good scene every month or so. All right, you've got several bands on here. I've got them here, but there's actually a nifty graphic that NASA came up with to compare it to Landsat. So you see over here, you've got the red, that's blue, green, red, and near infrared at 10 meter resolution. Then you've got 4 of the red edge bands right here at 20 meter resolution, and then you have shortwave infrared here and here at 20 meter resolution, and these are different atmospheric correction bands at 60 meters resolution. So you've got quite a rich diversity of data at a very fine resolution. So the fun thing, when it originally came out, the only place you could get it was from the European Space Agency's data hub. And you would get these huge files of about 6 gigabytes or so that you had to use their special tool to extract the data from. Well, fortunately, Amazon started mirroring that data, and they cut it up into grid cells that match up with the UTM grid somewhat. And they've separated out the bands so that you can just grab the bands you need and download it directly from them. So you basically go to their site and download the KML file. You throw that up into Google Earth. You zoom on into the area you're looking at. We're going to look at this part of the lower Roanoke River. And you just click on the grid cell, and it says, okay, that's grid cell 18 SUE. So that's UTM zone 18. And then you just go to the website up here. They're a bit bucket. And you can just drill down into SUE, and then you go by year, month, day, and then number of image on there. And there's a directory for each one of them. And once you get into that directory, you see each band represented right here. Band 4 and band 8. Band 4 is the red band, and band 8 is the near-infrared band. So in this case, we're going to download this for the sake of our demonstration. Here you can see that you'll get in these grid cells, there'll probably be 3 to 4 images in each month. Some of them will be partial images like this, just because of the way that the data is collected. But you usually have at least one whole image in there. And if you go and click on that, this preview.jpg, you can pull it up in your web browser and see what it looks like before you download anything, which makes your life much easier. The metadata that comes with it, there's a JSON file in there that gives you metadata, and it will tell you what percentage of cloud is in there. So you can automate this with a Python script to scan through the data they've got and pull it down automatically from their bit bucket. But they were just doing it manually for this exercise. Now, we're going to use the NDVI analysis. It's Normalized Difference Vegetation Index. It's been around for several years. A lot of people use it because it's really simple to do. You just basically, take the near-infrared band, divide it by the red band, subtract the red band, then divide that by the near-infrared band plus the red band. And you end up with things being closer to 1 being green, closer to 0 being less green. I think that's right. Anyway, so what we do there is you perform the NDV analysis on each date, then you subtract the most recent date from the earlier date, and then I add 1 to that so that it gets it into a 2 to 0 range, and then I multiply it by 100 because I like to spread things out a little bit better. And it also allows you, if you're trying to save space, you can convert this to an integer grid, and it gives you the same information but takes up a lot less space than a floating point grid. So as you can see, this difference score, 100 is going to be no change whatsoever, and then as you go towards 0, things get greener, and as you go towards 200, things are getting less green. And that's how you'll be able to detect if you have a vegetation loss due to some kind of development. So we're looking, as I said before, at the upper, this is the lower Roanoke's down here, and I just found an area where some forestry had occurred up just north of the river. And do all this in QGIS just using the raster calculator that it has with it. And we're looking at the first image. This image is actually the 2016 coastal 6-inch ortho right now. But the Sentinel-2 image that we're going to look at is from the summer of 2015 for the first one, and then the summer of 2016 for the second one. So if you want to do the straight NDVI calculation, there are two ways to do it in QGIS. They actually have a canned way of doing it, but right now it'll do several different vegetation index analyses at once. But we want to keep things a little simple, so we're just going to do the same equation that I mentioned before, and you just you can select the individual layers in here. They pop up down here, and then you just minus that's near infrared minus red divided by red, near infrared plus red. And then you just do that and you get your NDVI. Now if you want to do everything in one step, then you just sort of do the first calculation, and then you subtract the second date's calculation from it, and then you add 1 to it and by 100. So I'm just putting that up there if you want to do it all in one shot. So this is what things look like. The image up here is from the summer 2014 NAPE imagery. And this is the NDVI calculation, done for the from that first scene, which is July 26, 2015. And you can just see these are all the forested areas in here. These are actually farm fields, and there's I guess some sort of farm structure, probably hog house or something like that. I don't really know. I'm just looking at the trees.
That's what they are. That things are manure lagoons.
Oh. So, and then we look at the 2016 data, and this is from June 10th, 2016. And you see that, once again, you got the farm fields here, and you see a little bit of difference right over here in this one and over in here. But you've also got some farm fields over here where some stuff has been happening. So when you go ahead and apply the equation, as I said before, and then if we mask everything out that is less than 105 on that difference scale I showed you before, you pretty much see the difference in vegetation. These, mostly, there's some clearing in here, more of a clear cut in here, but these were just thinning operations in the pine forests that you could detect fairly easily. And then these are the farm fields. The interesting thing about this is that it was late spring, so that this year, in 2016, people had just harvested their winter wheat and plowed their fields. So what showed up as green the previous year in 2015 was just bare fields at this time. So it showed up as a big loss. Although if you're interested in agricultural fields, you could probably also use this to detect the patterns of agricultural development and usage in the farm fields as well. The couple of weaknesses, if you're just looking for the over 105, then the farm fields are going to throw you off unless you are actually looking for that. And the other thing is, if you have flooding going on, then even beneath the vegetation canopy, you're going to see the effect that the water is going to impact the near-infrared vegetation. It's going to seem like it's less green. So it'll throw things off a little bit. And I think that's all I've got. So on to Dr. Minnesota.
I will go quickly through it. Just very little time left. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I will just do a quick overview of some of the initiatives in the open source community in terms of citizen science. So first, let me introduce OSGeo, which is a not-for-profit organization for open source geospatial software. And this organization has an outreach which is called Geoforall, and whose mission is to make geospatial education and opportunities accessible to everybody. The organization includes laboratories all over the world. This was the laboratories when we started around 2012. It has about 10 laboratories. This is currently, we have over 100 laboratories all over the world collaborating on different initiatives, different projects, from software development to data collection. Among the initiatives that the open source and the Geoforall has is also citizen science, and that's what I will be talking about. It is a lot of the Geoforall initiatives in the citizen science is really built on top of OpenStreetMap. As you probably know, it's the largest citizen mapping initiative, and probably the highest impact part of OpenStreetMap is the humanitarian applications. It is not an OSGeo project, but many of the organizations and many of the laboratories that are in the Geoforall initiative are using OpenStreetMap as part of their work. So I will show just two examples. One is from Politecnico di Milano, where they organized a children's mapathon, and the University of Heidelberg, they are now starting to work and coordinate DEEP VGI, which is Volunteer Geographic Information. So this is one of the really amazing things that the community has done. They worked with humanitarian OSM and they went to schools, and as part of their classes, more than 200 kids took up a project to fill in missing data in Swaziland, and that's a country where they are really targeting this year to eradicate malaria. So they were just missing in certain areas the data about the buildings. They need to know where the buildings are so that they can distribute the nets, for example. So these kids, as part of their classes, they actually digitized over 5,000 buildings. And the process is pretty sophisticated. I don't know how familiar you are with it. It has this tasking manager where the entire area is split into tiles, and you can see whether somebody is working on the tile. But once they digitize it, there is also another person who verifies what is done. So the quality, so there is a quality assurance, and the data are actually very high quality. So here is another large project that is just starting. It's led from Heidelberg, but there are many other laboratories collaborating on this. And what they are doing, they are combining OpenStreetMap data, MapSwipe, and remote sensing. So they are essentially combining professionally collected data with the citizen collected data within deep neural networks to derive high-quality data sets. Then one project that we have been involved in is taking advantage of AMOS, which is archive of many outdoor scenes, and that takes the data from webcams, which are public. And there are like 50,000 or even more of these webcams that this initiative is actually archiving, but they also provide tools to analyze this data. So what one of my students has done, she took the data, she georeferenced them, so you can see the data actually look like this, so you need to convert them to georeference, essentially orthophoto type data. Then she was able to do the kernel density maps, and then because these are multi-temporal data, so she was able to display them and visualize them in what we call space-time cube. So these isosurfaces essentially show how the density of people evolves over time during the day, and this was before redesigning that plaza, and this is after redesigning the plaza. So you can see that as they change the structure of the sidewalks, the spatial and temporal distribution of how people move through that area has changed substantially. Then Gary Thompson asked us to show this application, which is a North Carolina application, which was developed for after Hurricane Matthew, and to allow people to provide information where the high water mark was, to validate the flood maps and to validate also the models. So extremely useful data. And then I will finish with some of the work that we do at NCSU Geoforall Laboratory, where we are trying to make the GIS modeling accessible to people through this tangible landscape. And you probably have seen it in the exhibition hall, so I don't need to talk about it, but you can see everybody from hardcore scientists like this to kids can work with this and can learn something, for example, about how water flows over topography. And over time, we have developed many different types of interaction and many different types of applications for this system. And you can find more examples of the citizen science tools at SciStarter. So I have included a link there. And then there is another huge initiative which is related to OpenStreetMap, and that's Youth Mappers. And they have just thousands of young college students contributing to OpenStreetMap. So that's all that I have.